In some sort of weird coincidence, I have recently finished Code Vein after putting it on hold for 3 whole years. This wasn't planned in advance, I'm just in the process of trying to make a conscious effort to clear some of my backlog. The reason why I'm bringing this up is because since the release of AI Limit, I have seen the majority of people compare it directly to Code Vein. While I don't necessarily agree with the comparison for a plethora of reasons, I can at the very least confirm that if you didn't like Code Vein, there is a high possibility that you might enjoy AI Limit. Don't get me wrong, and I mean it, don't you dare get me wrong. Code Vein might have a lot of good points, but after going through the game 3 times in a row, I can safely say that I'm never going to play it again in my life. If you are one to share a similar opinion, I can safely guarantee, to you specifically, that AI Limit has excellent level design, at least in comparison. While spectators might be inclined to file this one under the ever so dubious Souls-like genre, I feel that it's important to point out how that is not exactly correct. I am not here to contest what classifies for the genre, but at the very least I think we can all agree that at the core of it, the most defining trait is the management of stamina used to perform actions in real time. At a glance, AI Limit might look like it checks out all of the requirements, but I strongly believe that the flow of its gameplay is substantially different. And if anything, this would better be classified as a Soulslike. Yes, you roll away from attacks, level up at checkpoints, and boss battles are important. But if you know that much about the genre, let me run you through the game directly against those established expectations, and show you how this is quite different and definitely worth checking it out for yourself. Rolling right into it, instead of playing as an original creation with vague origins, you go through the story with an established character. An emotionless, amnesiac character, but an important character nevertheless. Each player can then add their own personal touch to the equipment, which is divided into a full outfit and a separate piece of headgear. While they might provide additional stat bonuses, the option is here to mainly dress up the character in what you find it looks best, and the available wardrobe is anything but short. There are even several options that drastically change the hairstyle, not even afraid of having it clip into everything. While it feels great to find the next checkpoint after having danced with death one too many times, the real reward is when you see one of these trading kiosks, because there are new clothes to try out now. Oh snap! Game of the Year? What are you doing here? So this is what they meant by the game being ass. I guess I'm okay with it. The same goes for the weapons, which feels like they are constantly throwing new ones in your direction, making the permanent choice rather difficult. This is clearly down to personal preference, but on these types of games I usually find it hard to try out new weapons when I find one that I really like, especially after investing some rare upgrade materials into it. For AI Limit, not only you keep stumbling into new interesting weapons, but we quickly unlock the ability to purchase infinite upgrade materials, so you never feel like you made a mistake by wasting precious resources. This type of accessible design ends up extending to the entire game, and I believe that it ends up being better for it. I can certainly see people complaining from both sides, but on this case, I think it's for the best. Personally, I managed to clear each boss encounter in either 4 or 5 tries, but there were still a few that had me sit down and actually learn the timing on their flashy moves. If anything, AI Limit is here to strictly remind you of the golden rule for this genre. Always roll towards the attacks, and you should be fine. It's also possible that the game was balanced to be easier because of how you can't engage in jolly cooperation with other players, with only a few select encounters where you can partner up with a story-relevant NPC. But hey, at least you can safely pause the game at any moment. If you have yet to notice the biggest difference from the genre, now is the perfect time to explain how there is no stamina system. This might raise the question of what stops you from just wailing non-stop on an enemy or dodging your life away. And the answer is that the game is built around that. so everything is highly aggressive and they want you to answer back in kind. Bloodborne applied a similar system, where after suffering an attack, it pushed you to retaliate as fast as possible to recover some of the health back, while simultaneously damaging the enemy, rewarding the risk of a more aggressive approach. The problem is that you're still limited to the available stamina, forcing you to take a breather between every string of actions. AI limit not only allows you to go all in, but it almost requires it, and that is because of the complementary sync rate system. This is a special meter that is divided into distinct segments, which drops when you take damage, and only recovers past the health point when you deal damage back. The higher the energy level, the higher the damage bonus. Pretty simple, right? With just that, you should be able to understand how the game wants you to play, but it gets even better. Instead of having separate resources for spells and special weapon skills, all of them consume sync rate. This means that if you want to gain the upper hand in battle, you must actively engage with the enemy directly. This goes even further when you include the frame abilities, unlockable skills that are the foundation for your active defense. While one of them is a shield, what you want to focus on is the other three. These include a special dodge, which when timed correctly with an attack, it leaves a ghost behind that explodes into an electric burst. A berserk mode where you lose health in exchange for additional energy strikes for each basic attack. And of course, the all-time #1 choice and my personal favorite, the parry. Oh yeah! Of course, all of these also consume sync rate, so you can't exactly panic spam them, otherwise, not only will you quickly burn through all of your energy, but you will be open to attacks which will further drop the sync rate until it hits 0 and your guard gets broken, if you are even lucky to be alive by that point. The reason as to why this system is so well built is because you are actively wasting resources by not using them. Usually on Soulslikes, one might be inclined to play conservatively with their special skills, because you don't know when a really strong opponent might appear out of nowhere. In here, a maxed out sync rate might give a good constant rate of damage, but if you apply pressure correctly, you can regain it almost instantly, so it incentivizes you to use a weapon skill which might stagger the enemy and open them further to a follow-up attack. Or you can use a spell to quickly clear an area, or safely finish an enemy during a high tension moment. Expanding on the build variety, you can equip a main seal which changes how the sync rate levels are divided, while also introducing some bonus modifiers which might influence your playstyle. Each one includes a different number of lesser seal slots, which you can use to put additional modifiers. I'm not going to say that the parry is busted here, but giving you the option to not consume sync rate on its use absolutely is, and I hope they never change it. On another note, you might be expecting the usual routine of having to go collect your money after dying, but when you die here, that is it. You get a cut out of the total you are holding, and that's that. This shouldn't be new for the veterans of the genre, but if you don't want to risk losing your money, remember to go back to your shop of choice and grab some useful items that won't disappear on death. The difference here is how you have a special accessory slot where you can put the core of certain specific bosses, and each one changes how much money you lose on death or how much you gain for enemy killed. I should also mention that despite the good variety of spells available, you only have a single spell slot. It's a bit like Sekiro in that regard, where it wants you to focus on the melee aspect of the combat, and the spells are just a surplus. Of course, this doesn't mean that you can't do a spell-focused build. There are certainly dedicated options for that in here. It's just that you'll be stuck with just one spell at a time. And while they call it a spell, know that the first and arguably best one that you get right in the beginning is a fucking railgun. Talking shit over there like I wouldn't hear. If after a few hours you feel like you made a mistake with your build, I will let you know that you can unlock the stat respect option fairly early too, and you can do it for free and as many times as you want. so if you ever got stuck on a boss, remember that you can very easily try a different approach. With all of this player freedom and accessibility, I guess the only thing I could really complain about is how I ended up lost more than once, to the point where I didn't know where to go to proceed until I revisited a few previous areas and realized that I missed some very crucial paths. This would be fine for side content, but I'm talking about the main path here. And this led me of course to such a degree that when I finally got back on track, I was several levels stronger than the enemies, so I steamrolled even harder than before. Besides that, I really don't have any other problem with it. As the first game of a new developer, they actually knew their basics and came out swinging. And depending on how the rest of the year turns out, this is a very strong contender for my game of the year. Okay, yeah, while I understand it in the context of the story, the name certainly leaves something to be desired. Which leads me to my final point. Look, even if I wanted to spoil the story, I would have a hard time doing so. I am not saying that the story is complicated. If anything, it's pretty straightforward when compared to the esoteric narrative of the Dark Souls trilogy. There are many characters that you can interact with, and some don't have any problem in letting the exposition roll until you're caught up on the current state of the narrative. But after trying to piece together the details with additional item descriptions and scattered documents, I realized that the clear, complete picture still eluded me. I still feel like I could resume it pretty easily, but that might spoil the overarching story, so if you don't want to hear it, just skip 10 seconds forward. If I got it right, the story is basically Shin Megami Tensei, where humans fucked around with the wrong thing, and now the food chain has a few extra steps that got out of control, and someone needs to punch their way up to management. For the world itself, you could also say that it takes inspiration from Blame. There you go, I said it. By this point, you should have expected this. If anything gives even the slightest hint towards the works of Tsutomu Nihei, it is most likely that I'm going to be talking about it here. At least on par with the deviation in expectations, AI Limit seems to have taken inspiration from Nihei's most recent work, especially the 2017's manga Aposims. I personally like all of them, but I am aware that some of his fans didn't like how his style evolved into something more approachable as time went on. He doesn't like it either, and if you want to feel depressed for the day, I urge you to look up his cover comment on the release of Blame Academy. While I wish I could show you all the cool stuff that exists in the game, that would imply showing you everything, so I'll restrain myself in hopes that you can play it for yourself sometime in the future. As we zip past the ever so distant origin point for the so-called Soulslike, fans of the genre already have enough experience to never again be faced by the novelty of their difficulty. This will certainly lead to what I can see being the biggest complaint towards AI Limit, as the overall balance, especially for the bosses, is pretty accessible to all types of playstyles. If by this point in time you somehow never tried out anything close to the genre, especially because you are put off by the emphasis on its characteristic difficulty, this should be a great entry point. But even if you are a veteran and you are just looking out for a good sci-fi take on the genre, this might just be the one you are waiting for. If you just want another post-apocalyptic game where a hot woman climbs ladders, they certainly also got you covered on that. Thank you for your time, and I'll see you on the next one.